Hello and welcome to Politics Today on Channels Television. I'm Charles Eruka.
And I'm Imana Amawe. Well, democracy must be built through open societies that share information. And when there's no information, where there is information, there is enlightenment. Where there is debate, there are solutions. When there is no sharing of power, no rule of law, no accountability, there is abuse, corruption, subjugation, and indignation. These are the words of Atifete Jajaga, the fourth and incumbent president of Kosovo.
Well, very interesting comment there. And this pace of post-inauguration months has indeed been fast, highlighted by calls for declaration of assets by public servants. Well, President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo fulfilled an earlier promise of disclosing to the public the details of their assets, which they had privately declared hitherto to the Code of Conduct Bureau as required by the Constitution. That initiative was indeed applauded by the generality of Nigerians who believed that the action crowned transparency at its peak.
Well, to bear or not to bear, that is the question. Well, the perceived prevalence of corruption among public servants and holders of political office has become so rampant in our society. And the declaration of assets at this point in time, with clarion calls for public servants to make their worth public, has been rife. Well, perhaps one of the reasons for this is the obscure manner of asset declarations, which probably prevents the public from having full knowledge of the worth of their leaders before they take up office. Perhaps the events that have played out in the past few days may be an effort to pass across the message that no one is above the law. Most recently, the president of Nigeria's Senate, Bukola Saraki, has been in the spotlight after the Code of Conduct Bureau recently filed a 13-count charge of false declaration of assets against him. Faced with possible arrest for failing to appear before the Code of Conduct Tribunal, he has sought redress in the courts, claiming he is a victim of political witch hunting and citing lack of jurisdiction on the part of the tribunal. Well, let's take a look.
Defendant, as a top-ranking political officer of this country, is expected to respect the constitutional provisions which he has sworn to defend, and at the same time, knowing the obvious implications of breaching the laws of this country. In view of this tribunal will continue with these proceedings, and accordingly, in view of the non-appearance of the defendant respondent, the tribunal orders the Inspector General of Police or the relevant security agency involved to produce the defendant before this tribunal. In view of the foregoing, the tribunal hereby order for a bench warrant to be issued against the defendant.
Very interesting times indeed, and well, to get a sense of what has been happening, we are being joined tonight, first in our Abuja studio, by Alhaji Mustapha Buba, former secretary of the Code of Conduct Bureau. And of course, he is a legal practitioner by profession.
And to help us give a sense of issues of events in our Lagos studios, we are being joined by Dr. Austin Nweze. He's a public affairs analyst and, of course, a lecturer at the Pan-African University. We're also being joined by Mr. Liborous Oshoma, a legal practitioner. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the privilege and opportunity.
Well, then, let's start straight away with the man who knows the inner workings of the Code of Conduct Bureau. And we will begin at this point with Mr. Buba. Well, I understand that Abuja is not yet ready, but indeed we will be joined by Mr. Buba, who will be taking us through the inner workings of the Code of Conduct Bureau as far as the issue of asset declaration is concerned. But then, well, there was this issue of jurisdiction that's talking about the Code of Conduct Tribunal and the Federal High Court. Now, the tribunal gave an order for the arrest of the Senate President, and then there was an order from the Federal High Court that no, he should not appear. And the chairman of the tribunal did say that the court is a court of coordinate jurisdiction. Those were his words. So in relation to the Federal High Court and the Code of Conduct Tribunal, how then is what's the relationship between the two?
Basically, I would want to also set the record straight on this issue. A lot of us have misconstrued the fact that the Federal High Court restrained the Code of Conduct. The Federal High Court never restrained the Code of Conduct. What the Federal High Court simply did was, after going through the ex parte application, said, look, guys, put that party on notice. Let them come show cause why they should not be restrained. So there's no restraining order. And then also, on the jurisdiction of the Code of Conduct and the Federal High Court, some persons have argued that the Code of Conduct Tribunal is not a court of superior records, having not been listed in Section 6 of the 1999 Constitution. But if you look at Section 6 of the 1999 Constitution that listed the courts from Supreme Court down, it also, if you look at subsection 5 of that section, it also, subparagraph J, also listed such other court as may be authorized by law to exercise jurisdiction on matters with respect to which the National Assembly may make laws. And Code of Conduct and the Election Petition Tribunal, Code of Conduct Tribunal and the Election Petition Tribunals are such courts of which the National Assembly have powers to make laws. These courts are what you call in law sui generis. They are special courts, specially created, what do you call a special purpose vehicle, specially created to carry out instructions as laid down by the tribunal, the Code of Conduct Bureau, or the election electoral matters, if in the case of election petition. In the case of jurisdiction, the Code of Conduct Tribunal and the Federal High Court, in as far as matters that had to do with Code of Conduct is concerned, are court of coordinate jurisdiction. Because appeal from the Code of Conduct lies to the Court of Appeal. Appeal from the Federal High Court also lies to the Court of Appeal. And so the Federal High Court does not have supervisory jurisdiction over the Code of Conduct. Just like the Federal High Court does not have supervisory jurisdiction over the NIC or the election petition tribunals. And so in that light, and looking at the law, the idea of going before a Federal High Court when you have a summons before a Code of Conduct and then rushing to the Federal High Court to ask that the Federal High Court restrain the Code of Conduct Tribunal, for me, is an abuse of court process. Because there's what we call preliminary objection in legal parlance. If you have a charge before you, or a summons, before a court issues a summons, and you have any problem with that summons, the best place to attack that summons is before that court that issued it, that, look, I have an objection, preliminary, that I don't think I will either get fair hearing here, or that this action as presently constituted is incompetent on the ground that the person that is to issue it, you know, or it was improperly issued. It is not another court of coordinate jurisdiction.
Okay, let me ask here. Okay, would you say that, would you deny the fact that the judge of the Federal High Court actually made a statement that the Code of Conduct Tribunal does not have jurisdiction to summon and even to try the Senate President? The
judge of the Federal High Court had not made that statement. What the judge of the Federal High Court basically simply said was, come before me. We'll call it affidavit to show cause. Come and show cause why I should not grant the prayers they are seeking for, because they're asking me to restrain you on the ground that there is no Attorney General in place, and that the man that issued, the officer that issued this summons, it's incompetent, because that summons ought to be issued by an Attorney General. And the court simply said, okay, come, this man had come before me asking me to restrain you. Come show cause why I should not restrain him. And the Code of Conduct said, look, you cannot ask me to come show cause to you in a matter that is purely within my jurisdiction. And so I have asked this man to come before me, and having refused to appear before me, I hereby issue a bench warrant against him. that he must be produced before me.
Very interesting. Now hold that thought, because we will now see what the Senate President had to say about the issuing of a bench warrant and then the matter of his appearance before the Code of Conduct Tribunal.
I've made a release earlier this morning. Most of these are frivolous, not true. To me, it sounds like issues of defense. I mean, if you say a statement about 13 years, he's been there, made my protocol over 2003, wake up 13 years later, and you wonder who is right, who is wrong. They are right, or those who are defense. I've always done my declaration and defend those things. Just we'll continue to do our work.
You feel you are being witch-hunted because of your position?
There's no doubt about it that it is mischievous. It is not correct. The issues there are not true. And as far as we are concerned, we're not shaking. We focus on what we have come here to do. Elected by the people, elected by my colleagues, to work for what is good in the interest of this country. And along the way, we'll do that work. And I think we should, we thought these things like this had gone with this election. Thank you.
Okay, now that was the Senate President's take on that matter, and definitely we will be addressing it from legal perspective. But then I understand Alhaji Mustapha Buba has joined us in our Abuja studio. Well, earlier on, I put the question to you before you came on anyway, that on this issue of assets declaration, what is the defined role of the Code of Conduct Bureau?
Well, the primary mandate the Code of Conduct Bureau is to issue asset declaration forms to all public officers. And by public officers, I mean anybody that draws his remuneration from the government treasury. And for the Bureau to verify, confirm whether or not it has complied with the requirement of the law under the Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal Act. Where it is satisfied that they have properly complied, then they take custody of this thing, of the form. But where they are not satisfied with the information contained in the form, it is for them to go to the field, verify, investigate, and where they determine a breach of the code in respect of asset declaration, then it is their duty to refer this matter to the Code of Conduct Tribunal. However, I would like to highlight that the function of the Code of Conduct Bureau does not begin and end with just collecting asset declarations by the public officers. There are other things which ought to have been looked into, like conflict of interest, abuse of office, breach of oath of office, acts prejudicial to the right of any other person. There are so many of them, like engaging in trade, profession, or business if you are fully engaged in the public service. All these are breaches, but it could appear that the Bureau doesn't really, as at now, have the capacity to enforce all these codes.
All right, Alhaji Buba, we will take a moment now, and when we return, definitely we will be getting more insight into the workings of the Code of Conduct Bureau. So we will be right back after this timeout.